Hey guys, welcome back to the Inside Track. Today I'm very excited. My special guest is the legendary Paul Brown, who is a hit-making producer in the contemporary jazz world. He's produced everybody from Patti Austin to George Benson to Al Jarreau to Larry Carlton. The list is endless. He's also a hit recording artist in his own right, and we're going to have some fun playing together today. He should be arriving anytime soon. Let's go and meet him. Looking snazzy? Got to.
Hello.
There, how you doing?
What's happening?
These are my people. This is Paul, special guest. James. Lovely. The legendary Paul Brown. Good job you wore your dark glasses today, isn't it?
Yes, of course. So,
Cool.
let's play some music.
Yeah, let's play some music. So Paul, I know you're a connoisseur of fine wine, so I didn't want to let you down today. So today we got a little minor vineyards, and that's
nice.
Benedetto wine. So
Wow,
it looks
Benedetto.
Like looks like you need a little top up.
Bring it.
And
Red wine, Benedetto. What else do you want?
well, not much. I think it just kind of says it all, doesn't it? So it's
Cheers,
great to
mate.
have you, man. Cheers. So let's get into this.
What do you want to know, man?
Well, there's a lot. Where do we begin? You started out as a recording engineer, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I was really a drummer first. You know, I started really young, at the age of 4, playing drums. And one of my parents, well, actually, my uncle was a pretty famous drummer. And so I studied with him until I was 15 years old, every week, you know, doing the drums and the rudiments. And he actually played the vibes, too. So he would give me, he would write out a part, you know, and he would play the vibes.
Right.
And so we were jamming. From an early age, I was, you know, having interplay with other musicians. So it was a great way to learn.
Yeah, I always think that starting out playing drums is great for time and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
It's the, you know, music's all about, for me, really all about rhythm, you know, and my dad is all about harmony. So, I mean, you have to have all those things together, but it was a great way to learn. And then later I started teaching drums, and I also play guitar. And so when I was teaching drums, I would have the kids, I would do the same thing. I would write out a part, they would play the drums, and I would play guitar, and
Yeah.
we'd play songs. So, I mean, that's the best way to learn.
Tell me about the transition to recording engineer, because you did a lot of that.
Well, what happened was when I got married, my brother-in-law at the time was Lee Hirschberg.
Sure.
And he was married to my sister at the time, and he was head engineer for Warner Brothers. So, and we were really good friends, and we used to play golf and whatnot. And he called me after I got married. He says, "Hey, how are you going to support your wife?" And I said, "Drumming as usual." He goes, "No, you're going to start working for me." So on Monday, I actually started working for Warner Brothers, and he was my, you know, seconding, and for him and Al Schmidt, two of the really great engineers. And so I learned how to engineer, and actually sent me to school for engineering as well while I was working there. And it was an incredible time to be in the studio as an engineer because...
Is that how you got hooked into Warner Brothers as a producer?
No, not really.
That was another thing.
I mean, I did have this relationship with Warner Brothers, and I always wanted to be sort of A&R for Warner Brothers, but it didn't. They were completely separate.
Right.
And by about 10 years between when I stopped working for Warner Brothers and when I got signed as a producer for Warner Brothers.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. How did you, because you went on to become a huge producer in the contemporary jazz format. Tell me how you got to be hooked in so...
Well, what happened was it was weird because as I started engineering more and more, I started bringing bands in the studio. And so that the future of the whole thing was like, of course, I was still a drummer and a guitar player, but I was finding bands and bringing them in the studio to record. So even when I was in bands as a drummer, I was always the guy writing the songs
Right.
and arranging the songs. So I kind of got into production early on in terms of how to put songs together and record and so on. But so I started producing and bringing bands in, and then I started to get hired as a producer as well. But I was really doing R&B music. I was working with Luther Vandross as an engineer for like 15 years, and a group called Shy, and was getting to produce and engineer. And then I was working with Bobby Caldwell and engineering for him. I mixed a record for him, and he asked me to come to Japan and record and mix house.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I've never done it before. That might be kind of fun. So I did, and on that tour, I met Boney James and a lot of other guys that I'm presently working with. And I was talking to Boney. He knew I was working with Luther Vandross.
Right.
He was a fan of the production that I had done. And he said, man, I really want you to produce a record for me. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you change your name from Jim Oppenheim to something, we didn't have Boney at the time, but we later came up with Boney. And we do a record that's like a Luther Vandross record with saxophone. I'm in. I think it'd be great. So that's what we did. And that record was in 1991, his first record, Trust. And after that record came out, it really did amazingly well right out of the box.
Yeah.
Everybody was shocked because it was on this little label. And
Spindletop.
Yeah, and I got calls from guys at Warner Brothers, Ricky Schultz and
I
Bob
remember
James,
Ricky,
saying, hey, man, who's this kid, Boney James? I said, well, it's the sax player. He goes, well, how are you selling so many records? I don't know. He made a record that people like, you know.
Yeah.
So Warner Brothers decided to sign him, and they bought the original record from Spindletop, and they signed him. And we did another 10 records together for Warner Brothers.
Right.
And so one thing sort of led to another, and people were like, hey, this kid is selling 1 million records, doing this sort of R&B jazz. So I started to get hired as, well, we want to have sales like that, so let's hire him. And
right, that makes sense.
So then Warner Brothers came to me and said, hey, we want to sign you to an exclusive production deal. So that's how that happened.
What's the next song we're going to play?
Brother Earl, that's the song I wrote with Mark Antoine, and that was actually for a drummer, Earl Palmer, who died during the making of Foreign Exchange. So we dedicated that song to Earl Palmer. That's why Brother Earl. Everybody thinks it's Earl Klugh, but no, it's not.
Why do you think you had so much success as a producer?
I don't know. I mean, it turns out that...
Were you doing something different?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the way I mix. And
Right.
at the time, nobody was really mixing jazz like that, you know, because
Yeah.
it really did sound like an R&B record. It had a lot of booty,
Right.
you know, had 808 kick and
Yeah.
had those sorts of things. And I remember one of the radio guys saying, you know, that 808 kick, in fact, it was on a Peter White song, Walk On By. It was like, boom, chicka, boom, chicka. And he goes, man, I love the song, but you got to get rid of that kick. I'm like,
Are you serious?
no, I'm not going to get rid of the kick. And it turned out to be a #1 song.
Right.
And then everybody sort of started copying that style. But I think the R&B, style that was introduced, and then the way it was mixed like an R&B record. And I think just the radio, they found a lot of success with it, and people started to, really just want it. And
that was kind of.
I mean, I was lucky. I was in that time, because Grover Washington was making, similar harmonic records.
Right.
And the style was sort of similar, but they weren't really R&B. They were more, I don't know what you call it, like old school jazz, I guess. But the Boney records were really like, wow, it was pretty different at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, now it doesn't sound that different, but back then it really was different because the people that were big at the time were like David Sanborn, and his records did not have an R&B. It was almost rock sounding.
And also, I mean, I remember the time when radio literally flipped to urban format. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was probably all your fault.
Could be, yeah. I don't know if I take total responsibility for it, but I mean, when I first started, they had the Quiet Storm,
Right.
and they would do like Luther, Grover, and a little Bob
Right.
James, and then a Marvin Gaye.
But
I thought it was great.
I remember back in '96, my very first album was an acid jazz project called Solar System, which was really funky.
Yeah.
And we put a song to radio which was too funky at the time. Now it would be tame. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So later when my Hip Sway record came out, which did have a more R&B edge, I mean they were all over it. So
Yeah.
it's probably thanks to you in a way. You got a couple of Grammys too, didn't you?
Yeah, from the Norman Brown Just Chillin' album.
Wow.
In that category, if you produced more than 50% of the album, you get a Grammy. And if you engineered more than 50%, I did 100% of both. So that was that's where I got mine.
You produced 2 Larry Carlton albums, didn't you? How was that working with him?
Oh, that was great too. But he was just like in and out. Like I would put the tracks together. On the first record I did with him, he's like, well, I need a radio hit, And so that was like, okay, let's try to make a very commercial rock record. So he said, just put all the tracks together. So I did. I put all the tracks together. They already sounded like hits.
That you had written. So he had nothing to do with the tracks.
He did come up with melodies, but the tracks themselves, they already sounded like hits.
I see. Yeah.
Before he ever played on them. But then he would come up with some great melody lines and stuff.
We got one more to play, haven't we? What we need to,
Yeah, well, we made an attempt at playing a song that we just wrote together when we came back from London, and it was so great playing with you, and we decided to write that song and call it Piccadilly Circus, and I love it. I think it's great. You did a great job on the track and killing.
told me one time, it might have been Rick Braun actually, he said, if you're going to write a hit, he said, it has to be emotional. It can't be
True.
technical.
That's true.
And I'm kind of right in the middle, because there's a side of me that likes things to be harmonically interesting, but at the same time I'm a big pop fan.
Yeah.
But
that comes out in your music though. It's like
right.
Even the song we just wrote. I mean, yeah, there's a technical element to it and a harmonic element to it, but there's also a very simplistic element to it. That's
but
really
I think
cool.
what Rick told me was very important. I never forgot it, because I think if you're going to have huge success, I think it is pretty much based on an emotional feeling rather than a technical feeling. And I think that's probably one of the things that you have been very successful at as a producer, bringing that out of people, don't you think?
I hope so. I mean, that's what I try to do. And I always think that when something reaches a technical point and I'm not enjoying it, I will definitely speak my mind about it.
Right.
And because just notes for no reason, that everything has to have a purpose. Every note that's played. Yeah. And there are times, especially with guitar, where there's phraseology that doesn't mean anything except for the guitar players.
Well, that's right. And
I just never liked that personally.
But the average Joe on the street doesn't hear harmony. They're not technicality doesn't mean anything to them.
Right. So if you don't hit them on an emotional level,
right.
You're
So
not hitting them.
maybe what you have the ability to do is to hear things through the ears of somebody who doesn't know about.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you're brilliant.
I know.
I don't care what they say.
I'm
about
a simpleton. Okay, let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
So tell me why you transitioned from being a very successful producer to becoming an artist.
Well, I mean, I got into the business to play. I was a drummer, and I was making a living playing drums. I played drums with Long John Baldry, who's a pretty famous English blues guy. And the other thing, like I said, Lee called me and said, "Hey, this is what you're going to do." I'm like, "Okay."
Yep.
So I kind of went down that road, and I really enjoyed it, and I started having success at it. So I just kept doing it. But always playing and writing as well. And then one day I was writing the song 24/7, and I was writing it not for me. I was just writing it for Boney or Kirk or whoever. Yeah. And when I got done with the song, I listened to it, and it was the first time I ever hit myself as a finished product. And I was like, whoa, that's really kind of cool. So I played it for my wife, and I played it for some other people, and I played it for Steve Chapman.
You played it for me?
Yeah. Did I?
You came to my little apartment
before I was signed.
Years ago, before you were signed.
Wow, okay.
I thought it was great.
Yeah. So everybody was like, "Hey, this is really cool. Who is it?" And I said, "Well, it's me."
Yep.
They said, "Well, do a couple more."
Yeah.
So I did, and that became the first record. And I did have a lot of people backed up when I was really doing a lot of production. Mm-hmm. I had no free time at all. So once I actually had a gap in my schedule for a month, I put 10 songs together for that CD. And I was lucky enough to have relationships with people, so I got a pretty good deal at a record company and so on. So
sure,
it was kind of a no-brainer.
You were perfectly positioned for it, really.
Yeah, and so that was pretty helpful, I think, to get me over that hump of putting out a new thing. And back then, my facility on a guitar was really not that great, and but it was more about the sort of production. But now, after I've done 7 CDs, now I'm working on my 8th CD, my facility on guitar is just...
Oh, yeah.
And that's because of doing gigs.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you practice in your room,
it's not the same.
Until you get out and play live, you're really not
going to
bring it up to that level. And we just did, 4 gigs together, and it's really been an amazing thing for my guitar playing. And I'm really focusing on the guitar more. Still trying to make the production cool, of course, but it's a lot more based on, having some facility.
So what would you say to a young artist who wanted to come up in our genre,
sure.
or any facet of the jazz world? What would you say to them to encourage them to, if they wanted to become a professional musician,
Well, I think you have to almost do everything. It's like I arrange, I record, I master, I produce, and I go play, and I play an instrument. I play multiple instruments. I have my own record company, my own studio. If you don't do all of it,
well, it's survival.
You need all these things that are you're making money off, and as they start to decline, at least you have multiple avenues. You know?
Right. So are you saying that to a new artist, learn to do this, learn to do that, learn to do
Learn
that,
to do everything.
learn to do everything.
Learn to do everything. I mean, maybe you're not going to do them all great,
Right.
but you know, but just being a guitar player or a bass player, that's a rough road.
What about your own projects? What do you have coming up?
Well, I did start a blues band. You know, I figured
Yeah.
that was another thing I needed to do. So
Play the blues.
I wanted to play the blues. In fact, I read a radio interview today, as a matter of fact, and the name of the show was "Goddamn Right, I Got the Blues." That's the name of the show. So I started this blues band with another guy named Paul Brown in Nashville, plays B3, and we met. He was also a producer, and we met at the Grammys when he was up for a production for Bobby Rush, and I was up for Summer Horns. And we were kind of making fun of each other because we had the same name. And so we met up and we were like, man, we got to start writing songs together. And we did. And we said, let's just form a band.
Well, listen, mate. I'm having a ball doing these gigs with you this year.
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
hoping we do
fun.
some more. So let's
Really
drink to that.
enjoying it.
And it's great to have you on the show, mate. Cheers. Well, that's our show. Thanks you guys for watching. Big thanks to Paul Brown and Minor Vineyards. If you would like to see where Paul is playing live, check his website at www.paulbrownjazz.com, and you might just see me playing live with him. We'll see you again right here next time on The Inside Track. Thanks you guys. What? I just hope I know what I'm doing.
Hello, I'm Chris Standring. Welcome to the Inside Track. Here we're going to be listening to music, jazz guitar, of course. I'll be playing some, maybe, if I feel like.
You're filming this, aren't you? I'm going to stay out of your way as much as I can.
As much as humanly, well,
It's so
subhumanly
tempting,
possible.
so tempting to piss all over you.
But the whole male prostitution thing, that's almost ending.
Well, and thank God for it, though.
Wow.
You know?
I got a couple years left.
Do you?
And scene.
And theme. Do a good show, right?
That was money.